Recent footage of Chinese contractors cutting down trees in Ololua Forest have brought only slight attention to a problem that we as Kenyans seem to have forgotten about: deforestation. The fact of the matter is, Kenya is in dire need of forest cover.
In Kenya, most of our catchments, most of our watersheds are affected by deforestation.
Deforestation is an all too familiar problem in Kenya, and a lot of it is linked to corruption and has denied Kenya of the cover that it needs to regulate temperatures, attract rainfall, and support life. But how did it happen, and which forests have been affected the most? According to findings from the Commission of Inquiry into the Illegal or Irregular Acquisition of Land, popularly known as the Ndungu Land Report, excisions begin in 1957, 3 years after the Swinnerton Commission on Land concluded its work. The plan focused on reforming agricultural production, but also led to the scrapping of traditional land ownership systems for the ownership model we have today. By the early 60s, excisions began in and around various forest reserves in Kenya. Some, especially in the Rift Valley, were attempts to resettle landless Kenyans under the 1 million acre scheme and various other resettlement initiatives. Others, as counsel to the Ndungu Land Commission, Wanyiri Kihoro says, were politically motivated and illegal.
Mama Ngina Kenyatta was allocated forest land in 1966, 1967 by her husband, who was then the president of this country.
According to data from the report, land excisions slowed down in the late 70s and 80s as a transition from a Kenyatta to a Moi presidency took root, but quickly shot up in the 90s. At this time, Kenya was returning to multi-party politics.
People who were good boys of the regime, the first reward expressed itself in terms of being allocated public land.
Between 1992 and 1996, excisions of Karura Forest picked up as government officials and corrupt businessmen colluded to excise parts of the forest to develop housing complexes. Nobel laureate Wangari Maathai and the Greenbelt movement's opposition to these land grabs became emblematic of the struggle to reclaim public forests. But as the years wore on, forests that make up part of the Mau complex also began being grabbed. Elburgon forest grabs took the lead, but Kiptagich Forest lost hundreds of hectares right before the transition of power from former President Moi to Mwai Kibaki. Kiptagich is a forest where former President Moi and a number of his cronies from the former ruling party, KANU, are named in the report as having been illegally allocated land. Grabs in Kiptagich and elsewhere continued beyond 2002 when former President Mwai Kibaki took power and constituted the Ndungu Land Commission. They slowed down in 2005, the year that the Forest Act was enacted. Nationally, over 75,000 hectares of forest were lost between 1957 and 2005. Think about it this way. If Nairobi County were a forest, that's like losing every single tree within that forest, plus a couple of thousand hectares to spare. Politicians and well-connected Kenyans were the primary beneficiaries of this land. What is the impact of widespread deforestation as has happened in Kenya? Flooding, extended periods of drought, crop failures, and food shortages. But who's responsible?
It is the leadership in this country that has eaten into the forested reserves of this country. Not the poor people who have only encroached in terms of going to get firewood in there and going away. It is the rich and the powerful who have allocated to themselves, built, gotten titles, and from there sold this land to anonymous to people who are not even aware that this is what had actually happened.